Good evening and welcome to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Back at it, as always, with Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, NFL.com. Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, SumerSports.com. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. You can catch my show at 810WHB.com. Full lineup of Chiefs topics for you tonight. The Chiefs coming off a big win, a much-needed win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll talk about the rushing attack, 32 carries for 154 yards from the running backs. They also added a touchdown. Is this proof that the Colts game was a letdown? Is Mahomes the leader for the MVP race? Is this the best offensive football? Again, something that's been kind of wondered aloud. Or were they slipping? They're now the second highest scoring team in the NFL. Are they the top dog? What do we learn about the defense? This time only 3 yards rushing allowed. Are the Chiefs the team to beat? Is the AFC West over? Are the Raiders more dangerous than the record? How tough is this schedule now? And of course, we'll wrap it all up with predictions on the Monday Night Football game. Jeff, let's start with that rushing attack. You like the physical football.
Hey.
You like people to pound the rock. They pounded the rock. What are your thoughts on what they were able to get done?
I know you guys liked it too. I know that whole pass to whatever it is, run to win. What's the
throw
phrase
to
you use?
win,
Throw to win.
run when you're winning.
I think it changed this week and it looked pretty good. I felt like the running game keyed everything, opened everything up. And I was on your station, Soren, earlier this week talking about, look, you can always open up an offense throwing the football deep, but you can also do it by beating somebody's ass over and over and over again. And you saw the effect that had on the Bucs. You know, I first of all, I was impressed, not so much by the win itself, but by the manner in which they won, by being the more physical team, by establishing the line of scrimmage, by really taking the will of a team that prides itself on run defense. But even more so, it just showed you that, you know, if they want to play that way, that's not on brand for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but that's their best path to being an elite offense again, where you're able to put a good defense on its heels. The play call sheet is wide open when it's 2nd and 4 and 3rd and 3. And to me, it's Isiah Pacheco. We'll talk about him later, but you saw the way he ran the football. That was the most physical running I've seen out of the Chiefs since Kareem Hunt was in the backfield. And I'm not sitting here, let's go championing let's get the wing tee going, the Wildcat and all this stuff, but you help your offensive line by doing what they did. You help your quarterback, you help your receivers by doing what they did. And I think that's the way they should be playing football going forward.
So I guess Jeff will shun the New York Giants' use of the Wildcat tomorrow night on our 2D podcast. You can catch that then. If he's not going to champion the run right now, joking, of course. I get what you're saying. But the physicality part, I am a believer in it, and I do like the analytics and the math and the numbers. And I will always tell you that every time you throw the ball, it's a more efficient way to move the ball than running it. But all those numbers were gathered with running being around them, right? If you completely eliminate running, how effective is the passing? Eric, you're obviously the lead math guy, the lead analytics, football analytics guy in the world. Tell me, the physicality part, how do you blend it in to the analytics? Because I think there's no doubt that looked really, really effective for the Kansas City Chiefs. They did throw more in the first half. I think at one point it was 20 passes to 8 runs in building up the lead, but there's no doubt in maintaining the lead and finishing the game, they were pounding the rock. How do you make that all fit together?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to, like, it's not even the physicality in and of itself is worthless, right? Like, there's only so much, and I know, you know, Mitchell Schwartz, you know, and I got sort of into it about like physicality for its own sake, and I do know, like, you know, if somebody played tight end, like, I do think there is something about being able to impose your will on another team, but you have to be effective, right? You have to make holes, and the running backs have to exploit them. We talked about last week, Edwards-Helaire, Pacheco, and McKinnon were all like under 2 yards after contact. They were much better Sunday, right? And when, you know, and this is one of those teams, like the Chiefs have been one of the better offensive lines in football for 2 years now. And they've opened holes for running backs. And against the Colts, you know, for whatever reason, Edwards-Helaire especially was not able to make anything of, you know, the opportunities available to them. And there were fewer opportunities available to them. So everything. And when you bring analytics into it, like, look, when assumptions change, you change your mind, right? And so, in a league now where they're playing a ton of too high stuff, where they're making it a lot easier to block the run game, right? Like, it's a lot easier to win when you are 5-on-5 in the run game, right? And you play and the box is open. And it's a lot easier when additionally your quarterback can run a little bit. So if they have those kind of box counts, do it. And if they're willing to throw the ball to the degree that they were and be effective that way, it's going to be even easier. And so it's down to the running backs to capitalize on the holes that they get in, for the first time all season, in my estimation. The running backs did their part. And so it was very good. And as a fan of a team that's lost 18-point leads in the playoffs 3 times in the last decade, it was a welcome sight to see them also hold on to a lead against a team that came back and threw for like 370 yards with a Hall of Fame quarterback. And so all that stuff worked well together. I liked it. I've been talking about the Chiefs just freaking running the ball over the last 2 years instead of this RPO, like kind of soft BS that they've been doing. And, they have the offensive line for it. And Trey Smith, after a slow start to the season, played really well Sunday.
I'm going to object, and I know Jeff's going to, if I kick that door down, he's going to come right in behind me. I'm about to object to. And I like the math, and I like the numbers, and I like the analytics, and I follow you through just about everything, Eric, when it comes to the math and the numbers. However, physicality matters, right? Like I think it matters. I think, why you are or are not physical is something to try to figure out. But this team was physical in this game, and they were dominant. They were also very accepting of or very good at taking the football away. I like takeaways. We had that conversation last year, Jeff saying, it's always turnovers when it's your team, but when it's your defense.
Giveaways.
Yeah, giveaways. And I like, listen, the Chiefs took it away, right? They've given it away. They took it away. So credit the team that's coming up with the football. I do like that part of it, and I'm a believer in that. But I think that the Chiefs all week, it was crystal clear. It was said, it was leaked out there by Clyde Edwards-Helaire that Andy Reid challenged the offensive line, challenged the running backs to be physical. When the game was over, he walked into the locker room, something that Sam McDowell, the columnist for The Star, who comes on my show every week and is a friend of this podcast, said he watched Andy Reid walk in and shake 6 hands. Patrick Mahomes and the 5 offensive linemen. Yeah. And it was his way of saying, mission accomplished, guys. This is what I asked you to do, and you did it. And I think that mindset, that physicality drove everything. Punishing the Bucs on both sides of the ball drove everything. It would be easier to make this point if the Chiefs didn't grab a turnover to start the game and immediately start up 7-0 and be able to play from in front. Shaq Barrett said that after the game as well. They jumped on us early, and they were able to play from in front, so everything was available to them. But I don't know how you quantify it mathematically, but I know that physicality does matter. Punching somebody in the mouth matters. It makes it easier to pile up the math in your favor. And so I do think it's important to when you listen, you want to be able to throw, you want to be able to run, you want to be able to do it all. But when you run, getting punked 7 carries for no yards the way Clyde Edwards-Helaire was against the Colts, even though the Chiefs won on both sides of the football and just had an absolute train wreck on special teams is what cost them that game. I think the other thing that cost them was they were absolutely getting punked, and they did the punking in this game. Jeff, I know you're going to follow me through that door.
Oh, totally. And look, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, I'm seeing some comments about how Andy put out the A game plan for this week and didn't have it last week. I think what Andy Reid realized was that my offensive line needs some confidence. Let's do some things that they like to do. Let's do some things that make them look good and feel good. And as Eric said, the runs were downhill. They weren't side to side, east-west, RPO style. Most of the runs they were doing were downhill. That allows linemen to feel really good about life. They moved the pocket. They did things with Mahomes. They got the ball out quick. And so I think what they learned in that Colts game was that, we just can't always do what we want to do and have great success doing it. There's enough good defenses out there that can take away the things that we'd like to do. And if we want to win with this offense, with this personnel, we got to get down and dirty sometimes. And I tell you what, I mean, the way the league is going right now, it's not just the Chiefs who have to do that. You're seeing more teams. This past week, there are probably 7-8 teams that gave their star running backs 25-plus carries. And they did it because what Eric is saying, defenses are built now to take away big plays. Defenses are built around the secondary. And so if you're going to have light boxes, if you're going to have 210-pound safeties up there trying to stop the run, you better start handing it off. I saw it in Philadelphia. I saw it in Atlanta. I saw it with the Titans who do it already, do it enough. There were probably multiple teams who did it. Saquon Barkley with the Giants. So it's kind of becoming a thing now to run the football when you have opportunities to do it.
And then the Chiefs saw it firsthand in the 2018 AFC Championship game when the Patriots got the ball and just stuffed it down their throats because they said, okay, you can sit back and wait for time to throw it. But with pedestrian running backs, they jammed it all the way down the field and in for the game-winning touchdown. I mean, if you're going to play no one in the box, running would be effective, right? Yeah. So it figures to say if you're only going to play 6 in the box, you got a lot better chance to stuff it down someone's throat than if they're playing 8 or 9 in the box.
Well, and also, I mean, what it's doing, and this is weird, and again, I don't want to be a homer here about the Chiefs, but like what it does is this helps the Chiefs because in a way, like these too high things, this is old hat for the Chiefs. They faced this nonsense all of last year and they struggled through it, right? Like, again, I talk about the midseason. I mean, they scored 3 points against the Titans, 24 points against the Giants, 19 points against Dallas, 13 points against Green Bay, 23 points against. Like they had this stretch of play where they were doing what this entire league is doing now, right? You look at totals in the NFL. Prior to last week, the median score in the NFL was 40 points. That's like at that time, this time 2 years ago, and I understand, home field advantage, all this stuff in COVID year, but at this point, 2 years ago, 2020, it was 10 points higher per game. And now and so what's interesting is last year, what the Chiefs led the NFL in points per drive. They also had the fewest drives in the league, right? That was what the league was trying to get them to do. And eventually they got good at it, right? They got good at scoring in the few opportunities that they had. And that was why the Chargers game and the Indianapolis game and the Bengals game in the playoffs were so alarming because they had gotten so good at capitalizing on drives. The rest of the NFL, because look, the rest of the NFL didn't have to deal with this stuff, right? Justin Herbert didn't have to deal with this stuff. Tom Brady, Tom Brady already was throwing the offense that beats this defense. And so he was, in that realm. But the reason quarterback play is down in the NFL is because they're going through all the nonsense that Patrick Mahomes went through last year. And in my estimation, without the coach that can take them over the top and without the quarterback that can take them over the top. So if the Chiefs can adapt, run the football and beat up these kind of defenses, they're going to be hard to beat.
I agreed. And you talk about the offensive scoring. The Chiefs are at 29 a game right now, second highest scoring team in the league, behind Eric Eager's Detroit Lions, by the way, and Jeff Chadiha's Detroit Lions. Yeah. We'll see if that continues. But I mean, that begs the question, Jeff. Are we at a point where we're ready to say that this offense is again the best in the National Football League?
I'm not ready to go there yet. I mean, they're definitely top 3 or 4 right now based on the numbers. And as Eric said, just the lack of offense from other teams and the injuries and personnel changes. But Buffalo and Philadelphia, to me, are the 2 best offenses in the NFL right now. They've got largely the best personnel. One team's got probably at least a quarterback who's the equal of Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. And just the number of weapons. When those teams are on, they can do so many things to you that the Chiefs can do those things on a day like they had against Tampa, but they also had 2 clunkers in there where they scored 2 offensive touchdowns in 2 games or 4 offensive touchdowns in 2 games with the Chargers and with the Colts. And so, yeah, they looked great against the Cardinals and great yesterday or on Sunday night, but it's hard for me to say that they're the best just yet. I think they have to do it, and they're going to have an opportunity to prove that over the coming weeks when you've got the Bills and you've got the Titans, you've got the Niners, you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. You're going to see 3 of the top 4 scoring defenses in the NFL in the next month. So they may change my mind on that. They're playing at a high level, no question about it, based on how Sunday night went. But if you're asking me to pick an offense that I would go with, I'd take those 2 teams over the Chiefs right now.
The 2 teams being
Buffalo and Philadelphia.
I will not take the Eagles. I will listen to the Buffalo Bills and even accept the Bills to some degree. Eric, 9 points a game the Bucs defense was giving up before this game. The Green Bay Packers were one of the teams. They held them to just 14 points. So, I agree. One game, even against a very good defense, even against what was at that time considered the best defense, doesn't wrap it all up, right? Early precincts reporting, many precincts still to go before we get the final answer on this. But where do you sit? Best offense, primed to be the best offense? I mean, I like Jeff's point that, look, they didn't look real good against the Colts. We talked about the trap game thing. We can get into that. Was this the validity of that Colt game was a trap game, was a letdown game for them? But, if we were to ding them for those games and the Chargers kept them somewhat in check, even though they weren't able to win, then what do we say about the other 30 teams that are behind them who I guess have been held in check numerous other times? I mean, they're the second best scoring offense in the NFL. Yes, 2 great games, 1 okay game against a good opponent, 1 dog. What does that make this offense, Eric?
I mean, we're in a competitive league, right? So you have to be they're not as good as the Chiefs offense, in 18, 19, 20. I think they're better than last year. I think I think they have the potential to be the best in the league. All the ones you're talking about, Eagles at the line of scrimmage are so good. Buffalo, the quarterback, is kind of in the tier with Mahomes. I don't think he's better, but he's in that group. There's no offense in the end. The Lions are fun, and we love the Lions, but like they're not in that class either. Like it's the Eagles and the Bills who are in that equivalence class with the Chiefs right now. And like I said, I think the Chiefs can beat everybody with experience against these types of defenses. The problem the Eagles have, they're great at the line of scrimmage. They're great at the skill position. Hurts is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback if you force him to do the things that Mahomes has to do every game. And then I think Josh Allen is just a little weaker of a version of who Mahomes is, which is like can do everything, has a great arm, has great awareness, but he's a little weaker than Pat, in my opinion. So I would put, and to top it all off, right, we saw some good performance on Sunday night from Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Valdes-Scantling should have come down with that touchdown, but we're looking at, they have 9 touchdowns, 9 different players with receiving touchdowns this year, and Juju and Valdes-Scantling are neither one of those players. The one big thing that we haven't talked about yet Sunday was early in the game, they got Travis Kelce involved quickly and often, right? And that was a very okay, this is our best player and we're going to him repeatedly. And that was something that did not happen in the Super Bowl against the Bucs, who have great linebackers in David and Devin White. So I'm going to project here. I think they're going to be the best offense. I think right now they're in a clump with 2 other teams, Philly and Buffalo.
I'm going through here real quick, and I will tell you, I think the next 2 are going to get better. Where is Washington ranking? Oh, boy. They're ways down there, too. 30, 28, 26, 24, 23. And the Jacksonville Jaguars rank at, if they're 23, 22, 20, 18, 16, 14. We're ready to get on board with the Eagles, or at least say they're the equal, when their point totals have come against the 32nd, 27th, 23rd, and 14th best defenses in the NFL.
Wait a minute, who's 14?
14 is Jacksonville.
You sure about that?
By
I
yards.
Say, if you go by points, it's a different. Well, if you go by yards, the Chiefs are 24th in yards. I mean, it's just.
Well, as a defense,
let's set the criteria. Let's set the criteria then. What are we talking about? Just points per game? Or are we talking about personnel? Are we talking about what?
Jacksonville's 14th in yards. They're 4th in points. So that's a very valid point you make. Let me look down here. The Lions are 32nd in points allowed. The Vikings are. Washington is 29th in points allowed. And the Minnesota Vikings they do get better. It looks like they're going to be middle of the pack. Quickly to go from the top here. 4, 6, 8.
Look, the Eagles are a weird team, right? Because in 2 straight games, they scored 24 points in the first half and none in the second half because they had such a big lead, right? This is their defense is, again, I think the Chiefs defense is a top 10 unit. The Eagles are maybe a little bit better than them, and so the Eagles have been able to.
We're talking about. I want to be clear. We're talking about.
No, but this scoring stuff, when you do points per game, Like when they don't want to murder Carson Wentz in that game, dude. Like that game was 24-0 at halftime, and this poor dude from North Dakota State's about to die. So they're basically just like, okay, let's just running clock this second half. That's a little bit different than Tom Brady slinging the ball around the yard and the Chiefs needing to score to make sure that Tom Brady doesn't hawk them from behind. I do think that's my issue.
It was 21-3.
And Andy Reid saw an opportunity to blow an 18-point lead. I agree with you. Andy Reid sees 21-3 like Steph Curry sees a corner three.
I don't get how surrendering a bunch of points to Carson Wentz is somehow a reason
they didn't surrender
why.
A bunch of points to Carson Wentz. That's the point. It's like they were up 24-2, right, or whatever it was at halftime. They won 24-8, and like that's part of their points for and points against. The Chiefs had a lot of points at halftime. They also scored a ton of points in the second half because they knew if they didn't, Tom Brady was going to catch them. Carson Wentz ain't catching anybody, guys. Like
against the number
four guys about to die out
there. Against the number one defense in the NFL.
What's that?
They scored a bunch of points in the second half against the number one team in the NFL. And
you're arguing that they're equivalent then.
Wait a minute,
they're not equivalent. The Chiefs are that, and there's a standard deviation, and then it's the Bills, the Eagles, all those teams.
Listen. I knew I would have a fight on this. I am
double team.
Stunned that the fight is with you, Eager. Yeah. I am so hurt and so let down at this moment. The number one defense in the NFL is what the Bucs were. 9 points a game they were giving up, and in the second half, you're indicting the Chiefs' offense because they scored points against the Bucs in the second half.
No, I just literally said that I'm similarly impressed. I didn't say better. I said they're in the similar equivalence class for me, the Bills and the Eagles, and moving forward, I think the Chiefs will be the best. That is a different thing than to say, oh, I think the Eagles are far and away better than the Chiefs. The Eagles are impressive as hell. Like that's and it's a good thing.
Yeah. Have you watched the Eagles this year?
I have watched the Eagles. Am I the only one who's seen Jalen Hurts? Do you really think Jalen Hurts
MVP candidate?
That will go by the wayside as soon as he plays real teams.
Here, would we be having this conversation this time last week? Was anybody sitting here last week saying the Chiefs had the best offense in the NFL?
Yes, we were talking about it being a letdown and a trap game, and I said I came away from that game more inspired, more bullish on the Kansas City Chiefs than I was before the game because they literally shot themselves in the foot. There were no toes left after that game. They had blown every goddamn toe off their foot that they could find.
But there was no
Let's
conversation
ask
about the
Jeff. I actually want to ask Jeff a question. Jeff,
being the best.
Who's ceiling? Who's like this is I think where we're going to agree on something. Okay,
yeah.
Whose offensive ceiling is the highest in the NFL
right now?
Like,
are you saying? Oh, so you're saying
if everybody plays their game as well as they can, including coaching and quarterback, which offense is the highest ceiling?
Oh, it's the Chiefs.
Chiefs. Like I think that's what Soren wanted to hear. And you and I were like, okay, I was literally sitting with 70,000 other people. I watched that team score 17 points against a bunk ass Colts team. I saw it happen with my own two eyes. And I get that you can go on the road and look, I get that you go on the road and beat the best defense in football. And I get that. That was amazing. And I'm trying to explain also why when I looked at Philadelphia, I thought, okay, this is a team that's going to be a house. I do agree when you play Minnesota and Detroit and all that, it muddies the waters a little bit. But the Chiefs
doesn't Arizona muddy the water for the Chiefs? Then I mean, if you're going to diminish competition, I mean, every team
the Chiefs ended Isaiah Simmons' career that day. Like that dude is not playing again because Andy twisted him around in circles. I don't know.
Are we condemning the Chiefs for beating a first place?
We're not condemning anybody, Petro. We're giving the Eagles some respect because they have one of the best offensive lines in football, one of the best receiving duos in football, one of the best tight ends in football, and a damn good quarterback making a very modest wage. That is the Eagles. Now, I didn't say they were better. I do say that like when the Chiefs better strap their helmets on when they play them in the Super Bowl. That's all I'm saying.
4 touchdowns.
I think he's
Jalen
got
Hurts.
8. I think he's got 4 on the ground and 4 throwing.
Yeah, come on.
Let's see if he's held. Let's see if he's still standing.
He's leading the league in yards.
Hey, go watch Philadelphia play football. You'll be impressed with their.
You know what? I'll bet it looks a lot like Baltimore in January.
No,
Dragons.
They're averaging 280 yards a game passing. They're averaging more yards passing than Kansas City's is.
Dragging their blankies back into the locker room, licking their wounds, wondering why it didn't work.
Thank God we're taping this. we're going to pull this one back out. And I'm not saying. Look, I think it's definitely a down year for offensive football in general, and so I think the 3 teams we've named deserve to be in the conversation because of the way they played. And for me, the Eagles and the Bills have better offensive personnel. I mean, you cannot sit here and tell me that what the Chiefs have around Mahomes is better than what
just
Josh
give all
Allen
that Scantling time, Jeff. Come on.
Jalen Hurts have around them.
Just give Juju and MVS some more time. A little bit more time. You saw it a little bit this week.
Yeah. I saw Andy Reid's reaction to that drop pass in the end zone.
That ball got tipped twice. Listen, it's a part of the journey for MVS.
I am a fan of the Eagles' talent around Jalen Hurts, and I think, but Jalen Hurts, what is he? Is he Alex Smith or is he Patrick Mahomes?
You can win a Super Bowl with Alex Smith on a rookie deal. Like that's the point. Like
sure
I think. Yeah, of course. But like that's why the ceiling what would you say, Petro? The ceiling for the Eagles is not as good as the Chiefs. I will grant you that because if the Chiefs start getting out of their wide receivers what they hope to, they're going to be unstoppable. The Eagles are already getting out of Devontae Smith. And by the way, was Smith hurt last week? Smith and A.J. Brown, they're already getting in those 2 guys what they've expected, right? So that's part of the whole right now, they're in a good spot. What I would expect to have happen is the Chiefs to be better than them down the stretch.
Yeah, and really, when you're having this conversation, it's not just about Mahomes. It's about a back like Miles Sanders, who had 134 yards on 27 carries last week when they were in the rain, having to run the ball more, doing that. It's about Dallas Goedert isn't Travis Kelce, but he's a Pro Bowl tight end. And in fact, if you throw in Quez Watkins, they've got 3 receivers who would be starting for the Chiefs right now.
I don't know. Tony Gonzalez called Dallas Goedert the best tight end in football. Apparently that's
really good.
Apparently that's Amazon Prime's new way of looking at the game is to come out and just, in addition to the Madden cast that you can look at, which I absolutely enjoy very much. It's also to make outlandish statements just for the effect of seeing what
Goddard was terrific last year, though. I don't.
He's a good player.
Can I just point out that the Chiefs' win over the Cardinals was like maligned. I made the joke they are a first place team and a last place team because everyone in that division is 2-2.
Yeah.
By the grace of God, by the way.
Who do the Eagles play this week?
Dallas, right?
They are going to dick kick the Cardinals.
They play Cardinals.
Really?
Yes.
So
the Cardinals suck.
So what's the spread?
Sorry.
13.5, 14 and a half?
Is that what it is?
The Eagles are like 6-point road favorites. Well, 5.
And what does that say?
It says
what's the point you're making?
The only people who the numbers, well, in a way, all of our jobs, if we're complete idiots all the time, we're fired. So we do have something at stake. But Vegas is paid to have a strong opinion on, and Eric quotes the markets all the time, which are the odds makers. The odds makers say the Eagles are 5 points better. Granted, in Arizona, Eric will say it's only 1.5 for home field, and I don't think Arizona is one of the better home fields. So you're talking about a team that's 6.5 points different?
No, they're a touchdown better than a team that won 11 games last year that has a quarterback making $46 million APY and a coach and a general manager that just got a contract extension. Like the Cardinals stink, but they are in a league full of teams that stink too.
I'm on the Cards. Give me the Cards and the points.
Okay. Petro, I will bet you a steak dinner that the Eagles cover this number.
I am on
you were dug in. If
it was this easy, everybody up here, Philly's a lock. Philly covers. Philly. Give me the other side. When the whole world's on one side, give me the other one. I'll take it.
I would advise you to watch that game closely. You will come away with a different
I've watched the Eagles. They're very good.
The Cardinals could have me and Jeff at linebacker, and they would do a better job on defense.
Are the Eagles? I honestly I can't believe, it's great that I'm warring with Eager on this. Are the Eagles not like it's Tom Brady? Oh, we've given up on him for dead so many times. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not saying he's done. How many times do the Chiefs have to come around and be called out? How many times were the Patriots called out? Done, dead. Only to rise again. Like the Chiefs couldn't beat the Bucs. Yeah, they did. They dominated the Bucs.
I don't think people were. There are people picking the Chiefs to win that game. I think you're kind of rewriting history now, along with the fact that there were many years when the Patriots did not have the best offense in football. They had the best quarterback, they had the best offense, which is what we're talking about here. You got the best quarterback, but to extend that to say, okay, this offense is the best in the NFL right now after 4 games. That's what we've watched. I just think that's a bit of a reach.
Petro, by the way, can you put up our friend Leslie Robertson's? Yes. Okay. For one, he's not fading the squares. He's betting with the steam. This thing opened at, like I said, I'm in my new job. I'm not betting, so it started at 6. That's what I anchored on. It got to 5. Petro is going with the sharps. Like he's going with the market here.
You
want to call me and Jeff squares,
what I'm looking at is it opened at 4 and went to 5. I'm also looking at 58% of the tickets being written on the Eagles, but 53% of the cash.
Yeah, I mean those numbers are. We can do we'll do a whole betting show once FanDuel come get us and give us some money to sponsor the show. We'll talk to you about what those splits mean. But the thing about it is like you don't know, like the only thing you know about the sharp and square side is like where the number goes, right? Because like that's the only thing that moves the market. Interesting. I just wanted to give a little feedback there. Somebody calling me a square, it kind of hits me. Look, it was like when Shaq Barrett said that the offensive line for the Chiefs was no different now than it was in Super Bowl 55. I took that a little bit to heart here.
Is the AFC West done, Jeff?
No, it's week 4.
Right, it's week 4, but this is what I put this up as a poll. Will there be at any time during the course of the year a time, and we're headed to bumpy waters for the Chiefs, obviously. Raiders, then at the Bills, or then host the Bills, and then at the 49ers. Those are a couple of tough games. Chargers actually we went through this the other day. Chargers' schedule is kind of easy right now, and I offered it up. Will the Chiefs ever not be in? I'll ask you this: will they ever not be in first place in this division the rest of the way?
There's a chance. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a chance of that happening. I mean, if you're really looking at what's happening in this league this year, where was it week 4 this past weekend? 14 of the 16 games played had a 1-score differential in the fourth quarter, which is a record or ties a record for the most. That happened the most times in 1 week. The margin of difference, the margin between these two, between all the teams out there, between the good teams and the bad teams, has probably never been slimmer. A team starting 0-2 or 1-3 is not a death knell for not making the playoffs or having a chance to win a division. That 17th game gives you so much more time. It's one more game, but it feels like there's a lot more time to figure out who you are and what you can be. See the Cincinnati Bengals, who were 0-2 2 weeks ago, and people were saying Super Bowl hangover, flukes. They're 2-2, right back in business. So for me, no, I think that until we start playing more games between AFC West teams, I'm not ready to sit here and say that these teams are done and the Chiefs are going to walk away with it. It'll be competitive. They have the advantage right now, but let's talk about this back in a month or 6 weeks from now. It might be totally different.
We talked about it at the Browns this week for the Chargers, Broncos at home, Seahawks at home. Seahawks looking better. Again, first place Seahawks at 2-2 in the NFC West, at the Falcons, and then they get an at 49ers, Chiefs, at Cards. Eric, where do you sit on the AFC West and what it is? Is it, like, obviously there's more football to be played if Patrick Mahomes goes down, but you get the point. Has it been established that through all this hype and all this hyperbole during the offseason about how difficult this division was going to be and how difficult the AFC West or the AFC as a total was going to be, there are only 3 teams. Now, granted, we're 4 games in, so it makes it easy for it to be 2-2. There are only 3 teams in the AFC with a winning record: Dolphins, Bills, Chiefs. There's nobody else in the AFC West with a winning record. Was that all a bunch of crap?
I don't know if it's all a bunch of crap. Like there is the random year where the Chargers go 12-4 and they're an actual threat to the Chiefs. So there's always I think like a little bit of respect there, even if it hasn't been earned by that team in any way, shape, or form. But right now the Chiefs are minus 175 on the markets. They basically closed the flip of that, right? So plus 175 is kind of right around where they close. So this is clearly trended in their direction. And when I look at this, like, by the way, I said Herbert might be worse this year. But throwing the Chargers aside, the Chargers they're still the best team in the AFC West.
The Chargers are the best team in the AFC West?
Besides the Chiefs.
Okay.
Like, I'm putting the Chiefs have distance between themselves and everybody else in that division. I think rightfully so. But if you want to look at, okay, let's say the Chiefs falter a little bit. Can any of these teams catch up? The Raiders, like Chandler Jones has 8 pressures this year. Like, he's not, that's a big chunk of money. Not getting, Hunter Renfro's hurt. Derek Carr is not playing well. The one guy that is playing well on that team is Josh Jacobs. And unfortunately, I think when that offensive line starts getting hurt and even worse than what it is, they're going to lean on Jacobs and it's not going to be efficient. So I don't think the Raiders have any chance. The Broncos, that was a bad loss for the Broncos, man. And like no Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon's 3 fumble returns for touchdowns the last 12 games he's played in. Like, that's a mess. And when you look at their receivers, their receivers just don't do the things that Russell Wilson throws well, which is outside stuff. Judy's more of an in to out guy, and Sutton's more of like a bad ball guy, and it's not meshing well in that offense. So and Alberto, Missouri legend, it played 1 snap last week. That was supposed to be their athletic tight end that goes, that's supposed to be their guy. And then you go to the Chargers. The Chargers almost blew a 20-point lead to the Houston Texans. Like, this is not a strong team, and Justin Herbert is still legitimately hurt. Like, I just don't think that they're going to, so I do think minus 175 is a bet I would make if I were a Chiefs fan who gets to gamble now in Kansas. I would bet minus 175 on the Chiefs to win that division.
Yeah, I think, the Chargers got to go now, right? They got to go now with this part of the schedule. Hope that the Chiefs get dragged down in both games, the Bills and Niners, to give them a chance to get in front and play from in front. They had that chance last year as well when the Chiefs came out slow and they weren't able to hold them off. By the way, I will point out 7th best in QBR, a 102 passer rating with 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and I believe is leading the league in passing yards. Yes, Justin Herbert.
Yeah, he's leading the league in passing yards because he's put his team in position to be behind a few times and have to come back. So yeah, I would say, I mean, you look at yards per attempt, it's not particularly great.
Okay, that's fair. That's
like
fair.
I mean, the efficiency.
I think your point's valid, but he doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't suck.
He is playing hurt too.
He's not. He isn't him. Like as the kids would say. Like Justin Herbert's 10th in yards per attempt in the NFL. Like, I was told before the year this man was an MVP candidate and he is a top 10 quarterback, just like we all said that he would be. And the fact is, you wake up in the morning and Patrick Mahomes is still the AFC West leader. some things never change.
All right, then listen, if the AFC West isn't over, then he is still an MVP candidate. I mean, to Jeff's point, he's playing with jacked up ribs and, you know.
two games ago, he couldn't even run 2 yards.
But that's the point. Like, I don't think it's getting it better for the guy, right?
I think your point was that he sucked.
No, my point is that he was not going to have this ascension. Everybody, like my friend Steven Ruiz had him as the third best quarterback in the NFL on the Ringer. You know, the Ringer tried to do this like quarterback ranking thing. My brother in Christ had him ahead of Josh Allen. Like, this is not like we got out of control for a guy who has accomplished jack shit in the NFL, and it got out of control. And like, I think Herbert's great. I think he's a top 10 QB. I think he's got a great arm. He's fun to watch. But my guy is a 6 to 10 best quarterback in the NFL. We were way too quick to be like, oh, this is the next great guy. Play a game in January that matters for once.
You know, and I'm old enough to remember when Eric was down at a guy named Matthew Stafford, and this guy just couldn't win, and was just a whole bunch of
and he stinks again
stats and overblown and.
I will come to Eric's defense. This has been the most bizarre Red, Gold, and Bold we've had here. I will actually come to his defense on Matt Stafford. With the way Matt Stafford's playing this year, that's looking like a Mark Rippon freak. And you know, what's his name? The Jets quarterback now that played for the Ravens. Joe Flacco. A Joe Flacco playoff run.
I mean, if Jaquiski Tartt catches that interception in the NFC title game, like, it's like the whole thing is different on Stafford, right? Stafford threw 2 interceptions in that Super Bowl too, and again, you can win with you can win with somebody like Herbert, absolutely. You can't if you're the Chargers, though. You can't win with anybody if you're the Chargers. They haven't won since Stan Humphries.
Oh, that's
I'm joking a little bit, but like, you know what I'm saying, like. Everybody, like, people were talking about Herbert like he was in the same equivalence class as Mahomes and Allen, and that was freaking ridiculous. That is ridiculous stuff.
Yeah. He's played 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm. And when Pat had gotten done, played 2 years, he won a Super Bowl. Like, these things.
So wait. So do you think if Justin Herbert was playing with Andy Reid and the cast of characters that Mahomes had when he came in the league, he wouldn't have a ring by now?
No.
You got to be killing me now.
No, listen.
There's a huge difference between losing, like Mahomes, like, he's won 75% of his games. There's a humongous difference between him and a guy that's 500.
And Mahomes barely has a ring himself. I mean,
that's the other thing. It's like we're 10 minutes stretch in Miami away from being the new Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's 7 minutes to go in the game. He's down 10 in the Super Bowl, and he gets it done. Listen, I will grant you. I will take Andy Reid and whatever drama fest is going on around Eric Bieniemy and everything else that's going on long before I'll take Lombardi calling the action from the sidelines. So, yes, your point is valid. I think Justin Herbert and almost any quarterback, if not every quarterback, would be better with Andy Reid. Yes. But you should get to and even win a playoff game, right? And that hasn't happened yet.
If the Cincinnati Bengals can make the playoffs and win playoff games in the year that you were supposedly the guy, it tells me a little bit about, and like, again, and I'm a guy. I grew up
but Eric, you know this.
Put up 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns and not win diddly every year. And there's just a little something there. And again, I think Herbert's better than Cousins. But look, they had a 10-point lead in Kansas City on a Thursday night, and my guy went 3 and out, 3 straight possessions. If Patrick Mahomes did that, and he did that once in the AFC title game, which Justin Herbert will never touch. He did that once the AFC title game, and we're wondering if my guy got punched in the face by Bieniemy at halftime. That is the difference. Justin Herbert plays like he got punched by Eric Bieniemy half his games.
Oh, God. Yeah, I agree with Terry. It's time to move on. We're too far down the road of insanity with.
Oh my God, I don't even. I wouldn't even know how to reserve the topic if we weren't going to move on. Of course, we're going to move on. There's nothing else to say after that. Oh my God, that's fantastic. All right, so let me then understand this. If Herbert is that good and the Chiefs defense held him to 3 and outs and they just smoked the Bucs, held them to 3 yards rushing, where are we now at on this defense? Jeff?
Look, I mean, again, you're bullish on them. I like them. They're improved. I think sometimes, and I understand this, I think they've been so bad at this time of year for so long that the overcorrection is to look at them as if they're like a top 5 defense now. I can't go there just yet. When you watch them play, they just don't pressure the quarterback enough with their defensive line. When they blitz to Jerry Sneed, hey, it's great. But I saw Tom Brady drop back a lot of times. I didn't see him get hit that many times by guys wearing numbers in the 90s or in the 50s or in the 70s. It's like that to me is becoming a big question mark. And again, I think that when they play teams that have good receivers, they'll get big numbers put up against them. See Mike Evans in this game. And so Tom Brady had the ball for 21 minutes. He threw for almost 400 yards against him. I think they're a much improved unit, but I think we'll, just as with the offense being the best in the NFL, we'll know more about them when they see Buffalo, when they see the Bengals, when they see some of these teams that are more high-powered and have more weapons on the outside.
Mike Evans and Godwin were back for this game, and maybe
they put up numbers.
Yeah.
Right. They went right down the field before halftime.
My thing is, like, what's the bar for the Chiefs defense, right? Like, this doesn't have to be the 2013, 2014 Chiefs defense. This doesn't have to be the 95, 97 defense, right? Like, their job is to do what they did Sunday, which is make tackles, right? Like what was it? Was it Fenton on that first drive where he's one-on-one with a guy 5 yards from the first down? And if that wasn't Daniel Sorensen every single freaking third down last year, I don't know what it was, but it was Fenton this time, and he makes a tackle. They have to punt, and L'Jarius Sneed gets a sack and forces a fumble. Like, that's a big play. All the Chiefs need to do defensively is flip possessions like 2 or 3 times a game, and they're doing far more than that now. I agree with Jeff that they gave up stuff. I also just the Juan Thornhill hit to me was that was a great hit. Like, do we miss Tyrann Mathieu here? Do we this defense is? Ow. We obviously don't miss Hitchens. We knew that ahead of time, but this defense is moving and they're making plays, and the sins that they're making are sins of commission, which is great. Like, you like that in a defense, and they're going to give up stuff to Brady because he had Mike Evans, he had Godwin, he had, but they gave that all up in the second half. Like, this game was
before halftime, he went right down the field, and he threw the ball at Mike Evans 3 times, was in the end zone,
and had 10 points.
And 3 starters out too. Like, that was
all I'm saying is when they had to throw the football, and the Chiefs knew it, they weren't getting to Tom Brady. So it wasn't
Brady was Brady's like a quick thrower, right? Like, this is 1, 2, 3, and again, when it reduces down to a great quarterback throwing in under 2.5 seconds, it's all about making tackles and not getting gashed. And they didn't give up big plays in this game, not like the 70-yard variety, not the kind of stuff they gave up to Buffalo in the playoffs that kept got them back in the game.
I get your point, but I think at the end of the day, they gave up 10 points and a half. That's a pretty good start.
I think we're talking about whether they're great or they're good. I'm saying they're good. You're saying they're great.
I agree with you, Jeff. I think they're top 10. I don't think they're top 5.
I think that they will be, top 10, top 8, and knock on the door of top 5 before it's all said and done. If they take on no water on the D-line, I think all the comments about the pass rush are correct. I think they're paper thin there. Like, if Frank Clark gets sick, which happens seemingly every year, or hurt, if Chris Jones gets hurt, they're in big trouble. I do think that's the Achilles heel of the defense. I think they've got just enough defensive line for Spagnuolo to be, and they're creating just enough problems with that front 4 for Spagnuolo to be pretty crafty in dialing up the blitz. Right? I don't think you can, although, every year when they had Brady, the Patriots would trade whatever 10-sack guy they had, and they would dial up pressure. They would scheme up pressure. And I'm wondering if Steve Spagnuolo hasn't spent a lot of time studying what the Patriots are doing. Based upon his comments to me last week, I don't think that's it. He told me he doesn't watch anybody else in the league and how they're playing defense, which I was kind of like, maybe give it a look in the offseason, see some other ideas. I think I'd need to have a lot more back and forth with him to really comprehend what he's saying there. But I that's the problem, is if they take on water up there, then they start to be in trouble. But the back seven, really good. I think it's really good. Like, no, there's no Darrelle Revis, but I think when McDuffie comes back, and who's should be back soon, or could be back soon, and Gay is back, I think they're pretty freaking salty in the back seven. So,
and you haven't seen, and you have draft picks who, the best thing I think about this team right now is you have draft picks who are, I think, going to be good players who aren't necessarily essential to the process being amazing right now. And that's Brian Cook and that's Leo Chanel. And those are two guys that I think as the season progresses, they're going to get more. Like, Cook played a ton of snaps the other day, and Chanel is still kind of in that like hybrid role because Darius Harris has played really well in Willie Gay's stead. Like, I think this defense has depth too. Like, I mean, they're playing without three starters right now. That would have been a death knell last year. And this year, again, I agree with Jeff. Like, they gave up some stuff against Tampa Bay, but Tampa
even to your guy Herbert too, without Keenan Allen there. I mean, Herbert put up numbers against him, and Mike Williams put up numbers against him. I just think that's the only thing I have to see when you talk about the back end being salty is when it's one thing if you're seeing Michael Pittman and Alex Pierce, or whoever the Cardinals were trotting out there in week one to play receiver for Kyler Murray. It's a different story when you're seeing high-end receivers who dictate coverage.
Mike Evans had 100 yards. They threw the ball, 900 times? I mean, some of it's the volume. They ran the ball. The Bucs ran the ball 6 times. I'm with you. Jalen Daniels versus Mike Evans is not the matchup I want to see on Super Bowl Sunday. That's my point about Trent McDuffie. When McDuffie comes back, it looks better, and there's no weakness. By the way, the Bucs threw the football 52 times
with a makeshift offensive line, right? I'm hoping that a defensive line with Chris Jones, with the ability to get after the quarterback, a running back, a first-round pick, a defensive end, would create more pressure in that situation. That's the only argument I'm making for them not being great.
I agree. I agree. That's the knock. And if they don't get a turnover to start the game and basically play the entire game from in front, how different does it look? Do they get Fat Lenny going on the ground game to you with that nickname? By the way, I'm a big Fournette fan, so that's said out of love. And as a fellow fatty, and he's not even that fat. Everyone acted like the guy was 350 or something when he came to camp this year. But if they're not down 7-0 immediately, maybe they give him the ball and it looks a little different. I will say this: the run defense is real, right? They're the number 1 run defense in the NFL. Will you give that some credibility?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, again, where we're starting from with this conversation is the bar is so low, literally. It's almost underground. You're talking about run defense at this time of year for the Chiefs. So for them to be as salty as they've been, and I think they've been opportunistic too. I mean, talking about Snead again, making the plays when they have to make the plays, or Jalen Watson with the interception return. But yeah, the run defense, they're definitely right there where they need to be. So I'm not criticizing them. I'm just not on the bandwagon.
You're just not as high on them as I am. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Are the Raiders more dangerous than their 1-3 record, Eric? Is there anything to fear with the Raiders? My fear is that this looks like another trap game coming off the Bucs, looking ahead to the Bills. That's the fear here from my vantage point. They did get Devontae Adams going. They did beat the Broncos. I mean, what's your view of the Raiders right now, Eric?
I don't think they're good at the things that the Chiefs are weak at, right? Like they don't like Max Crosby's a great player, but they don't really rush the passer that well outside of him. Coverage for them is they have Trayvon Merrick, who's a great safety, but for the most part, they're terrible in the back end. They run the ball well, but the Chiefs, as we said here, are doing a good job of holding the point of attack. They've done really well against Jonathan Taylor. They did really well against Austin Eckler. throwing the football, like the Chiefs have always been good at limiting number one wide receivers. Like, I know Williams and Evans had their games, but Evans was mostly after the game was decided. So I think that they'll be fine. Would I lay 7 points? Probably not. On Monday Night Football, just because divisional games and rivalries and stuff like that. But to me, I think that it's going to be a pretty big test to see if they can avoid the letdown. Right? They normally don't let down against divisional foes. That's why they're so good under Mahomes against the division. But we did see in 2020 that was one of their losses.
They don't let down against division foes because usually the division foes suck. They're all supposed to be better this year. This is supposed to be the year they're there. I talked to Tim Grunhard, who played in some legendary Chiefs Raiders games today on my radio show, and I said, listen, are we? What's your? Is this Raider week? Is it a big deal? And he's like, yeah, it just doesn't seem to have the same kind of juice because the Raiders don't ever win. I know they got the one win and the scare in 2020. Do you remember what the score was in those two games combined last year?
Yeah, they got crushed both games.
Yeah.
The Raiders
89-23. New coach. I mean, there were two coaches last year. I think the change happened. Did they get Gruden once?
They got the interim guy both times.
Both guys. All right, so 89-23 collectively was the score last year. But Josh McDaniels, is new and getting the feel for his team. Jeff, do you see a path here? I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's a big rivalry. The Raider week thing, I don't think exists anymore because no one's challenged this team. I think that the rivalry comes from the team. I think it's a big week for the Raiders, right? Anyone playing Kansas City right now and that division is a big week. But is it fresh enough? That's been one of the common themes in the chat room that's fresh, so they won't have a letdown.
Hey, look, I've said this before. I don't believe in letdowns in the NFL. In college football, yeah, sure. You're talking about 19, 20-year-old kids who are going out drinking and partying and feeling good about life, and they go out and play Texas Southern and get their ass kicked. That kind of stuff happens all the time. I think in the NFL, again, there's too much parity. I think when teams lose, it's because they got beat. It's not because they didn't show up to play. And if you're telling me it's a team that's won as much as the Chiefs have won in the last 4 years is still having letdowns or vulnerable to letdowns, it's just hard for me to buy that. I don't think they're going to have the same energy that you saw in Tampa, but you also don't hear Max Crosby saying we're going to have a coming out party against their offensive line this week. We're going to, clearly the Chiefs felt challenged in a way that made that game personal for them. If you can't get up for an AFC West rival, a team that has talent, and I do disagree with Eric here. I do think that guys, a combination of Devontae Adams, Darren Waller can be problematic for a team that is, got small safeties. We saw what that big tight end for the Colts did to Juan Thornhill in man coverage. I can see Darren Waller doing that a lot in a game like this.
Except Darren Waller's been an absolute no-show. I mean, it's like,
well, so were the Colts before the Chiefs played him, right?
Fair point. Yeah, really fair point. I mean, I'm a Waller fan. I'm a Waller fantasy owner too, and it sucks right now having Darren Waller. 7 points is all the number is, Eric. Like, what are the Raiders dangerous? I mean, 7's is a big number, but the Chiefs just laid an ass kicking on national TV of the team that was kind of getting trumpeted as being the best team in the league. Certainly a great defense, right? They I feel like the holding the Bucs to only 3 yards rushing is significant and maybe would get some play. Raiders finally get a win, but against a Bronco team that's been an absolute boob fest, and it's only 7.
Yeah, I think to me it's the divisional rival game, right? Like it's the people are still and betting, we're 4 weeks into the year, right? So people are still gonna like have basically their sort of same priors on teams that they've had going into the year more than the first few weeks suggest. And people coming into the year were very high on the Raiders, right? Like the Raiders had a win total of 8.5. The Chiefs had a win total of 10.5, right? So, home field advantage isn't what it was. It's also, a different home field advantage because the Raiders are traveling west to east, but they're not having to play at noon, all that stuff. 7 does, and I I would have laid 6.5 when it opened and it got out to 7.5. There was professional people who bought back on 7.5. That's why it's 7. I think that, it does feel like I would not take the money with the Raiders. I would not take the points with the Raiders. I would say that.
Okay. It's I think it's interesting that it's just 7 points because I would think a little bit that that scares me. That's my one reservation that they're not coming strong with that. Again, like we said, 89-23 collectively in the 2 games last year, and it's just 7. It is a new coach. Schedule wise, the rest of the way, Jeff, how has you get into a season, everybody's got the whole schedule is based upon last year's record, which never. It's why I like to use the schedule based upon the Super Bowl odds this year because I think that's a more true indicator of what a team is going to be. But now that we see where things are starting to shake out, what's your view of the schedule moving forward for the Chiefs?
When this schedule came out, I thought it was easing up in the second half. I think we all felt like the first half was going to be tougher. Now I feel like there's a stretch in there. Obviously with Buffalo and Tennessee and San Francisco, but Jacksonville is a much tougher game than it was when the schedule came out. And the stretch there where they have the Rams, who very likely could have a new receiver playing for them by that point in the season and might have figured some things out if they're going to really be a playoff contender or try to repeat as champions. The Bengals, the Chargers, and the Broncos. There's a 5-game stretch in there that's going to basically be rubber meeting the road for the Chiefs. And I think after that, it's pretty easy. But Jacksonville being better and the combination of those games coming when they come, I think it makes for a pretty tough 7 to 8 game stretch there in the middle of the year that I didn't think was there before.
How do you think the schedule's playing, Eric?
It's getting easier for sure. I think it's more middle of the pack in the NFL now. Like I said, on Twitter, I think if you would have said, okay, first 3 out of 4 are on the road, 1 against the Bucs, 1 against the Chargers, 1 against the Colts team that many people thought was going to, win the AFC South, and a Cardinals team that made the playoffs last year. And you go 3-1, that's a really good accomplishment. I think that sets them up really well. And, obviously the next few games are going to be tough, but most of them are at home. So I do think it leans up on them a little bit. And there aren't really good teams in the NFL. That's, what are the 49ers, right? I think they have a good defense, but I don't is Jimmy G going to throw it to the free safety 3 times?
But are there bad teams though? That's the bigger question. There may not be great teams, but
that's a question for the Lions, Jeff. That's not a question for the Chiefs.
We're comparing the schedule to what it was beforehand. Just real quick, let's run it down. Raiders, better or worse than they were expected to be? Worse, right?
Worse. Yeah.
Bills, better, worse, or same?
Same.
Niners.
They're about the same.
About the same. I agree. Titans.
Well, it depends on what version you're talking about. The version we saw last week.
I think
that showed the first couple of weeks.
I think based on what they were last year and what the expectations were, they're worse based upon the fact that NBC scheduled them for a Sunday night game. They thought they were going to be good again. I think they're worse. Jaguars are better, undeniable. Chargers, worse.
Wait a minute, they're worse. They're
2-2.
What were they supposed to be right now?
They were supposed to win the AFC West
after 4 games.
Yes, supposed to be locked up.
Yeah.
Rams, better or worse?
Well, they're worse, but
worse.
I think their problems are fixable.
Bengals, better or worse?
They're about the same.
Oh, no, I think they're worse. Broncos.
Based on what?
2-2?
What were they last year?
The defending AFC champions?
They were 2-2 last year at this point.
Okay, fair point.
I'm pretty sure that they were.
But the way it looks right now, Broncos, worse. Texans, same.
Well, so wait a minute. So before we get too deep into this, so
we're almost done with it.
This is overly simplistic.
I know it is.
Do you think they're good teams or bad teams?
Let's just finish the exercise. See,
okay.
We're talking about, is the schedule easier or worse than we thought it was going to be coming into the year? And the Seahawks are probably better than we thought they would be. Broncos worse, Raiders worse again. I mean, overall, I hear schedules not playing up as strong as it was supposed to be. That's all I'm getting at.
I think you've got Well, how should I say this so it makes sense? I think is that based on the idea that these teams were supposed to be a certain kind of team, or based on what they were last year?
Either way, I don't think it's that hard to say the schedule's just played down. If anything, it's setting up the Chiefs that if they don't do well, they look foolish. I just, the only two teams that are better, Seahawks are better, and they're 2-2. The Jaguars are better, and they're what, 2-2 also? I mean, so like the better teams, the teams that are definitively better aren't like 4-0.
Well,
it's not like the
mathematically,
Eagles
not everybody can be 4-0 on that list. All right, somebody's got to be. The Chiefs could be 2-2 right now if they had lost to the Chargers. That wouldn't make them. Would you say they were a lesser team right now? I'm looking at it like those teams that are on that list. Are teams that should compete for how many? Better way to ask this question: how many teams on that list could compete for a playoff spot?
Many. I mean,
yeah, that's my
the playoff pool is big, and the number of teams that stink is pretty big.
Let's say this: how many teams can compete for a championship? In my mind, Bills, Niners, Chargers. I'm more bullish on Herbert, but the amount of injuries that are going on around him.
Well,
it's not the Rams.
They're going to get Slater back.
That's not a championship team. At the very end, when they may be eliminated from the playoffs, that'll be fun.
Well,
Bengals, I think, will come around. Not the Broncos, Texans, Seahawks. I mean, I think there's like 4 teams that are really in the fight. I mean, like for all the parity there, I mean, like who's winning the championship? There's only a handful of teams. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Let's finish with this. Who wins on Monday night? What do you got? Chiefs and Raiders.
Chiefs win. I mean,
Easy?
What's that?
Easy? What kind of score?
Oh, I think I picked them 28-20. I don't think it'll be easy. I think all these AFC West games are going to be tough. So I got them 28-20.
Eric?
Yeah, I would say so. Let's do 31-20.
31-20?
The 20 is going to be hollow. It's going to be like potato chip points for the Raiders. They're going to be like backdoor type of stuff, but nonetheless.
I'm in for 33-17. I'm in for 33-17.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Rhett says the Raiders will bring it. I mean, like what? Their uniforms and cleats and
good uniform though.
Hey, let's not forget we're 2 weeks removed from the Colts game. Let's always remember that.
Which is why that game won't happen again.
And if you want to call it a fluke, call it a fluke. But I think you're going to see a lot of crazy stuff happening in the NFL. We've already seen the Ravens give up 2 17-point leads in 4 weeks. We've seen multiple 20-point comebacks. We've seen the Rams. I mean, we've seen the Falcons emerge, to your point, as a team that actually is viable in the NFC. I just think I don't think any team, even the Bills, is going to walk through this year unscathed or not have losses that you're like, oh my God, well, how'd this happen?
That's fair. We've already
not picking the Chiefs this week to have that happen, but I think they're going to be surprised by when we're talking in December. We'll have a different perspective on this.
And that loss has already happened in Kansas City. And here they sit. I said, in that loss,
there'll be more. There'll be more. Trust me.
There'll be more. Okay.
There'll be more.
How many? Where's
6? I picked them 10-7. 6 more coming.
6 more coming in?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see. That's going to do it for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, SumerSports.com. My name is Soren Petro from 810 WHB, 810WHB.com. Thank you very much for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.